Season 1 of The Walking Dead, it's one of the best things about it is how the walkers are more frightening than they are later on in the series. They like the little girl in the beginning, the
Yeah.
very first scene of the series.
Like,
What do you think?
Yeah, because Rick sees like a little girl walking by, and he like kneels down to like look under the car, and she's wearing slippers and a robe and stuff like that, and she stops and picks up a stuffed bunny off the road. So like there's still something in there of a little girl saying like, oh, I need to pick up this stuffed bunny.
Yes, exactly. They retain some aspect of their previous sentience. Yeah, they're definitely a lot more.
Like animated.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's really interesting.
It is, yeah. Because as the show progresses, they just completely lose any traces of humanity.
Right,
They're
right,
just
of who they were before.
Yeah, they're just essentially all the same, and they have only the most basic instincts and have no elements of their previous lives present. And in the first season, it's not that way at all. And
There's a couple examples of
yeah,
that we'll get to.
exactly. It's I read that the original showrunner wanted them to evolve in some way and potentially use tools and things like that.
Like learn.
Yeah, and not just remain as they are,
Just-
as in the
And right.
as the series ultimately turned out. They just
become like animated dead with no sense of
right.
their humanity or
They're
who
just
they were.
completely
And they can't evolve. They can't. They can't learn. They can't like become defensive or anything like that. They just are.
exactly.
I really like that, especially in the first season, they have more conversations that aren't necessarily about the walkers, and it's not like character like sorry, it's not like plot development dialogue. It's just like it's just dialogue. Like it seems very natural. Like when Rick and Shane are in their cop car in the beginning, and like they're just talking about like women don't turn off light switches and stuff like that. Like it's just banter, and it kind of shows more of the character, and I like that a lot.
Yes, me too. It's much more naturalistic dialogue, and as the show goes on, it becomes more about exposition, and things become sort of flatter in general. I mean, it's still good, but it's not. In the first season, and especially, yeah, in the very, very first scene after the credits in the first episode when they're eating their burgers and like talking about men and women, and I think Rick talks about him and Lori are having marital problems and what's going on, and yeah, it's much more natural, it's much more convincing as like human dialogue, and unfortunately that kind of drops away to some extent. I think it's the original showrunner who directed, he directed The Green Mile, The Shawshank Redemption, like some very good movies. And I think he's a good writer. I think he's good at characterization and dialogue, and it just doesn't feel the same as it goes on. And part of that is definitely, I mean, the fact that they're sort of like they're joking around, definitely, yeah, because it's pre-apocalypse. I'm sure that's part of it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, do you think it was an intentional decision to, like, as the show goes on and things become more critical and it's like all about survival, that's all their dialogue is about? Because this, like, they're just two cops sitting on the side of the road eating lunch. Like, life is good.
I think that's part of it. But I think even like later on when Shane is teaching Carl to fish, he's talking to him like that. Or no, to catch frogs. That's what it was. Yes. He was like, this is how we catch frogs, Carl. We're going to eat them frogs. And it's a lot more. So I think because like, especially maybe the first episode, but the first season has more of a cinematic feel, which I think is because it's I don't know if he's done any other TV shows, but he's done a lot of movies.
Okay.
And so I think it's I think it has more of that feel to it overall.
It does. I was gonna even say like the cinematography. They spent several seconds like on the food, and like you can see like the motion happening around the food, just like around the screen. But it's not as like jumpy. Like
yes,
the camera will stay on one thing for a little bit longer.
It lingers a bit. Yeah, it's a lot more like careful and considered cinematography. I agree completely. It's I think as the show goes on, they become much more just
action oriented.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we're filming this, and then we film this, and it's just much more like kind of workmanlike. It's just it's like done, done, done. I think there's a lot more of a like fluid feeling to it in the first season.
I agree.
So I think it's ridiculous that Rick is stupid enough to go into Atlanta. I mean, okay, first of all, the idea that in a plague situation where people are turning into zombies, that you would go to the densest population center you can find for safety is ridiculous. And I think the fact that all these people just accept it is pretty absurd. Go ahead.
Well, and also Morgan was like, or Dwayne, one of them, was like, "Oh yeah, that's what the broadcasts were saying until the broadcast stopped." And it's like, okay, well, well, they were saying that like it's the safe place, like we have refugee, like.
Yes, exactly. No,
right,
you're exactly
and then it
right.
Stopped.
That's what happened.
Like, if it stopped,
perhaps that's a red flag.
Yeah,
because it's like, well, gosh, maybe something happened to the refugee center,
right, and that's why they stopped.
If the broadcast stopped, it might not be a safe place anymore.
I mean, because like we know from Terminus, which I mean, if you're watching the show new, you don't know this yet, but like Terminus has broadcasts going out, so like. Obviously, they still have that ability. Sure.
Like, radio broadcast capability should still be something easy to maintain, unless you're overrun. Yeah.
Right.
And if you've read any of the Governor series books, like the Walking Dead books, just as a comparison.
I just want to make sure that's like the comic books about the governor, but then someone made them into novels. Is that correct?
No, they were. Okay. I mean, it's set in the comic book universe, but it was just novels written. By. I mean, it's like let's see, like the creator of the Walking Dead comic books is credited along with a different author. I mean, I'm pretty sure the second credited author was probably the one like actually doing most of the work and was just kind of like translating the creator's ideas, that kind of thing. Just in that book it's let's see, Philip and Brian Blake and some other characters who are doing something very similar where and this is like a bit earlier in the outbreak, but
they're like 14 days.
It's a bit earlier, and so it's a similar thing where they're like, we gotta go to Atlanta because that's where it'll be safest, and like in the book, it's like they're going into the closer and closer to the city center, and it keeps getting worse and worse, and like things keep getting more desolate and destroyed, and there are more and more walkers, and things just keep getting like worse and worse, and they're looking at it and thinking about it, but at no point do they consider turning around.
Right, like their car even like gets stuck, and they have to like find an alternate route, but like.
Exactly. It's like red flag after red flag after red flag. Which, guys, come on.
The same here. So like Rick's riding in on a horse. Like sad that he took that horse.
It is the horse. His death. Yeah.
Exactly. But like he's riding in on a horse, and it shows like the highway as he's going into Atlanta, and all the other cars on like the opposite side are just stopped.
Exactly.
There's like no cars going in. So, like, that's a red flag that there's no cars going in. But you had a good point that, like, in reality, like, if we were in that situation and we were caught in traffic, like, trying to get out, we would just, like, go on the off-ramp and drive on the opposite side of the road if no one else is there.
I mean, screw the rules of the road at this point. Like, if everyone's desperately trying to evacuate the city and it's, like, gridlock and you can't... at this point... No, it does not matter which direction traffic is supposed to be going.
Absolutely.
But no,
So then Rick, like, his horse gets taken down by the walkers, and he crawls under the tank. I think it's like really cool how the walkers are crawling in after him, and then on the opposite side of the tank there are some that like bend down to look to see him, and like that's just part of their like their sentience still, like they're still humans in there who are making like intelligent thoughts, who are moving like humans, which we don't see later on, and I think that's really cool. Also, their clothes, like and it makes sense that later on, like, they've been dead a lot longer. They've been out in like, in the wild, or not wild, whatever.
Sure.
But, like, a lot longer. They've gotten a lot dirtier. They are degrading. Their clothes are degrading. But, like, I love how, especially, like, this is the second episode now, where, like, their colors are bright still. There's a lady on top of the tank who climbed on top of the tank, which like they cannot do later on. They just don't have that physical
they would
ability.
Just stand there and just like grasp, but
right.
they would not
right.
be
They
able
wouldn't,
to.
They wouldn't crawl on top, which makes them so much creepier. But like she has like a very bright red shirt on, and as the camera like zooms out and pans away, like you can still see that even from pretty high up that it's red. And I just think that like it's so cool to like see like just one individual out of like all the masses, because like their clothes are still so vibrant because they were living human beings not that long ago. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think it's a lot more visually interesting.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, because it makes sense that they would become so monotonous and their clothes would just get so dirty and brown and gray as time goes on.
But even like the living people, their clothes get really kind of just...
They do. They get kind of bland. Yeah.
Yeah, and the colors just get kind of bland.
Yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves with the entire show is their regards and inconsistency to gunshots and how it would affect their hearing. So, like, when Rick is under the tank and there's, like, walkers on each side trying to get him and he's shooting them, like, that would be echoing off the tank, and that would be severely hurting his hearing. And then he goes into the tank and there's a walker in there and he shoots that one, and they do have like the ringing, and he's like swinging his head around, and it's like making him dizzy, and he's like really disoriented, and like that is so much more of how the show, like how it would be in real life. Like you even said, like, what if they did a show where all of them like lost their hearing naturally
yes
from the gunfire? And I think that's totally possible, because like it would reverb and it would echo and it would drastically hurt their hearing, especially later on, like at the prison
after
and stuff like that.
Years and years. Yeah.
Oh,
yes, but yeah,
right.
like
just constantly having that gunfire in like metal areas. I mean, if they're out like in the open, like in the woods, like that's probably not gonna hurt their hearing very much, but like if it's over and over and over and over, that probably would.
Oh yeah, if it's in close confines and it's just over and over and over, I think that would have been potentially like an interesting survival aspect to consider. Is what if they had to like, what if they had to keep that in mind a little bit, like when they're going inside and they're using guns, and then like over time, what if they what if they started getting tinnitus, or they they started like some characters started losing their hearing.
Right.
I feel like because there are deaf characters much later on, and like what if it had been like more of a long-term character, like I don't know, Carol or something, where just, somebody like, who uses guns a lot,
their hearing.
And
like they're in this like, maybe it's not a sporting goods store, maybe it's just like a department store, but when like the crew finds Rick, like I don't feel like hearing protection would be highly sought after as the apocalypse started.
You're right.
So I think as they're like trying to start making their lives, they could easily go to like a store that probably did get ransacked for the guns and the ammo, but the hearing protection would probably still be there. Yeah.
And I think that's totally correct. And they could, especially in a sporting goods store, they could get ear protection, like shooter's hearing protection that would stifle like really loud noises like gunshots, but still allow them to hear their environment, and like it wouldn't like impair their ability to survive.
I mean, they could even get that at like a specialized musician store, which might be
Oh, that's
harder
a
to
good
find,
point.
but
Yeah. But, and I mean, yeah, it would not be hard to find because that would be incredibly low on most people's
yeah.
list of priorities
Right,
to, like,
right.
scavenge
They're
as
not
it's
like,
happening.
oh, we need guns and
They're not
ammo
thinking,
and food
yeah.
and hearing protection.
They're not
like,
thinking long term like that, but it would make sense.
it's
yeah.
immediate survival.
But I think that would be a reasonable thing.
Yes.
Like when you have a second to think about what's going on, it's like, oh yeah, okay, we should probably grab something like that just in case. And like Rick should know better. Rick and
Yes.
Shane should know
They
better.
actually
You know,
probably should have had some
Yeah.
hearing protection at
the sheriff's
station. Yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah, they should have because
I'm
I
sure
mean they would have had a shooting range.
That's exactly
there.
what I was thinking. They would have had a range of some sort.
Oh yeah, no, I
We're gonna
totally
be-
agree.
We're gonna be so ready if there's an apocalypse.
I agree. We will. So ready. So, I want to note that it doesn't make sense that Merle was with the group scavenging for supplies in Atlanta because okay, who made that decision? I mean, Shane is in charge of the group at the quarry, so presumably he would have known that they were all going together to Atlanta, and
he does even say like, like Andrea volunteered to go, like she chose to go, so he knew who was there.
yeah. Well, okay, so then it's his fault, but it's also the rest of them who went with Merle, because what did they think was going to happen? Did they think Merle was going to be very, like, sensible?
Right.
And not, like, start fights with everyone?
Right, because even, like, when they're coming back, like, going back to the quarry, and they're, like, talking to Rick, they're like, oh, well, he's, like, what do they say? He's, what is the word? I'm blanking. Basically, like, he's unreliable, like, he just kind of does his own thing. They're, like, trying to make Rick feel better about him being stuck on the roof.
Yeah. But anyone who went with him is an idiot, and it was very predictable that something would go wrong. It should have been, like, Merle and Daryl going to the city on their own, something like that, because that would have made sense, and then everyone else in a different group, on a different occasion, something like that. That would have made sense. But just, like, basically putting Merle in charge of that group doesn't make sense. Because, like, obviously he's gonna be the one in charge in that situation. He's gonna tell everyone else what to do, and it's gonna not work. He's gonna be stupid and methed out, and he's gonna be, like, attracting walkers by, like, needlessly shooting off the roof, like, when the audience is first introduced to him.
Right. And, also, when they're in the van, going back to the quarry, making Rick feel better, someone, I can't remember who, says, like, no one's gonna miss him. Well, maybe Merle. Or maybe Daryl. And you brought up a great point that, like, maybe Daryl, like, obviously Daryl's gonna have an issue with this. So either, like, they don't know Merle and Daryl very well because, like, Daryl likes to go off on his own a lot. Or, I mean, I don't have an alternative for why they would say maybe.
Yeah. No, Daryl's definitely gonna care. He's definitely gonna be mad that they left him. I mean, yeah, that's a very, very obvious thing considering how close they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, let's see. Oh, so what was his name? The guy they chopped up.
Oh, crap.
Wayne?
I think it was Wayne, yes.
Wayne? Okay, so Rick makes a point when they're about to camouflage themselves by covering themselves in walker gore. He makes a point of taking this guy's driver's license out and basically, like, preaching about, oh, this used to be a human being, and da-da-da-da-da. He had a picture of a pretty girl.
Right, he used to be worried about bills just like us.
Yeah.
It's a picture, and so it's like with love from Rebecca
or Rachel.
Rachel,
I think, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so then he's like, if I find my family, I'm gonna tell them about Wayne. And it's like, okay, that's a lie because I really, really, really think he forgot by the time he found out that Lori and Carl were there at the quarry. Like, I really, really don't think he remembered that. And B, as you said, like, tell them what? Like, tell them what? Like, you don't really know anything about
Like,
this guy.
oh, there was a walker that we killed and used
Uh-huh.
his guts, and his name was Wayne, and he had a girlfriend named Rachel. Like,
He was an organ donor.
What, like, Carl.
Yeah.
Carl, I need to tell you about Wayne. Like, what are you gonna tell him?
Yeah.
What are you gonna tell Carl?
Exactly, yeah. It's like, oh, this stuff on me. Well, I guess it was washed off by that point. But
And they took the
these
jackets
particles of human gore on me. This
Under
used to
my
be
nails.
Wayne. Yeah. Yeah, that
Never
was
forget Wayne Carl.
my second born will be named Wayne. Yeah, no, that was a bit silly because I really think they forgot, like, maybe an hour after that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think anyone remembered.
No, I don't think so either. So earlier we mentioned about how in the beginning of the series, the walkers are more sentient and they have more of like their personality from when they were a human. And one of the best examples is Morgan's wife, Jenny. Is that her name? Jenny? Okay.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Jenny is very, very disturbing because she attempts to use the doorknob. Like, she walks
Yeah.
up to her old home when Morgan, Rick, and Dwayne are in there.
I don't. But correct me if I'm wrong.
go
I
ahead.
don't think it's their home. I think that's like.
Oh no,
where
you're
they,
right. You're
where they
right.
were,
Actually,
like,
that actually
that
raises
even
some
makes it, like,
questions,
even kinda
doesn't
creepier,
it? Like, did
like-
she see them go in?
Well, no. I think they were like they were on their way to Atlanta, but there were so many walkers and it was so hard that they decided to
that's
camp
true.
out
That's
there.
true. She was in there
Right,
with them.
right.
You're
This
right.
is
You're
Jen.
right.
Yeah, Jenny was in there with them and camping out for who knows how long.
No, you're right.
And then died and became a walker.
That's exactly right. Okay, yeah. So she did retain. So she wasn't remembering, like, living in there briefly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Which is like even creepier because it's not just
it's not like a long-term
right,
thing.
Right.
It's like from the past, I don't know, like 2 weeks or
Yeah,
so,
something like
depending
that.
on how long they've been in there. Yeah.
But she like walks up on the porch, like
Mm-hmm.
goes over the steps.
It doesn't just, like, fall over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, uh-huh. She, like, walks up, comes up to the door, and, like, starts, like, looking in the peephole.
Right.
And, like, yeah, she's like, she's, like, looking in there. She's like, this seems familiar somehow.
yeah.
And then she starts, like, trying to turn the doorknob.
Right.
While Rick is looking back out through the peephole at her.
Like she has the dexterity
Mm-hmm.
to do that, which they don't have that ability later on. And like her head motion is like
Yeah,
so
she's
creepy.
like, uh-huh,
and
she's,
how
like,
she's like
looking
she's just
around.
biting, like she's not growling, she's not making like like walker noises, she's just biting and like looking.
Yeah.
And she's super creepy. I
Mm-hmm.
love it though. It like if the whole show was like that, it would be so
I agree.
intensely just like
It would be be a lot more suspenseful. It'd be
it
a lot
would be.
like there's so much they could do with the walkers that like it would make them so much more frightening
Yeah.
and so much more interesting rather than just being like meat puppets that are just like, like just like a purely, because as they turn out, it's more or less just a purely like tactical consideration whether it's a threat to you or not. Like you don't, like, it's not really, I don't know, there's not, I mean, it's like scary in the sense that it's a threat, but they aren't really like, they're just reanimated corpses. They're not
Right.
like in any way people. And it
Right.
would be
They're- I
much more
mean-
frightening if they had some element of the people they used to be.
Right. And like when they're in masses, like they can cause a lot of damage and like can be a big threat, but like individually, they're not super threatening later on. And I think with their humanity, with their ability to jiggle the handle, like to look at someone, to do all of these different things, it makes it like super creepy.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when they're in the department store, one of them is trying to break in.
Yeah, using
Using
like,
a large rock.
Yeah. I also think that when they're at the sheriff's station, that's like a really important scene to note. Because we've seen this whole show like 5 times through, maybe.
I think
Like,
so.
I watched it a couple times before we got together.
I've probably seen it between 8 and 10 times.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. I think I've seen it 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But so at the sheriff's station, like Rick and Morgan are talking, and you noted this time. I've never noticed it before. Had you noticed this tattoo before?
Oh, and Morgan's tattoo.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I ever noticed it.
Like he has
That's
a tattoo
funny.
on his forearm that
Or
kind
it's
of,
his shoulder, but yes.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, that's
that like kind of looks like Jenny.
It does.
But like oddly, like okay, so later he's looking through pictures of Jenny, and like it doesn't look like Jenny as like when she was alive. It looks like Jenny as a walker, which is kind of like even stranger.
He's like, Dwayne, give me a tattoo of your mother. That's why it looks kind of,
like
it doesn't look so good.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Like, so we were wondering if that's like actually the actor's tattoo or like what that significance is. We looked online briefly, and some people said like it's a popular tattoo of Jimi Hendrix, which I don't see that, but
yeah, I agree. I don't really see that either. I suppose that's possible.
So when they're leaving the sheriff's station, there's a walker that's like behind the fence that comes up, and who was it?
Oh, Leon?
Leon.
Yeah.
Which I had never put this together before. At the very beginning of the series, when Rick gets shot,
Yeah.
they have like a new sheriff that's like like maybe not a trainee, but he seems
Like
pretty new to the force.
yeah.
And so they're waiting for that car to come by and hit like the spike strip to like blow its tires. And Shane looks over and he's like, "Turn your safety off, Leon." And Leon's like, "Oh," and he turns it off and then puts his gun back up. And so like I think you're right that's the same person who became a walker at the station. And Rick's like, he wasn't a bad guy, but he was
a dumbass,
like
something to
like
that
careless,
effect.
yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's so like he knows that person. I love the camera work when Rick shoots him. So it's showing it from Leon's profile, and Leon as a walker is holding on to the fence, and you see him get shot in the head, and you see the blood go out the back of his head, and his head like flops back, and then he's falling, but his like hands get caught on the fence, and so he like kind of holds himself up even though he's dead, and then he slowly just comes down, and it's like maybe like I'm probably gonna estimate this wrong, but like a 10-second shot of like just that, which you don't see that throughout the rest of the show. This is like this cinematographic like movie like quality.
Like, there's like more thought put into it, I think.
And it's like the detail and the camera angles and the cinematography is just so cool on this first season. I love it.
I agree. It's that was a very good shot. I agree. There's just a bit more like effort, and I think
detail.
And I think it's the fact that it's like a really experienced filmmaker.
Yeah, it has that movie quality to it.
And I think it's a shame they couldn't carry that through. And I mean, obviously a great deal of that is because it's like down to the director.
Right.
But like it's good because that doesn't require any more money. It doesn't require like you could just it really enhances the quality.
Right.
Like you don't require any more money. It's just a question of what you do with the resources you have.
Yeah.
And I think that's it really, I agree. This first season is really nice that way.